don't think me and Craig ever believed it was going to happen. I'm pushing the baby around Tesco's on DocuSign. I'm to bring me mate up saying, can you witness this? And then when the buyers rung to congratulate us, I was asleep. You walk in and you'd see the uncertainty in the staff. Kind of felt like I'd just sold them down the river. Is that how they see it? Very quickly my staff were saying they seem like okay guys and not too different to the way that we work. And I was like, well, that was why we felt it was a good fit. Trying to build your business to sell is not a bad plan.
So Steve, for those of you who don't know you, even though you're a regular on the NA socials, tell people a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, what your background is and where you're at now.
So I suppose a good place to start is I'm the commercial director of Amiga Asbestos Consultant now, soon to be a commercial manager of a company called Environmental Essentials. We've recently just been acquired end of March. So I suppose as a business owner with Amiga, I've been there 11 years now.
God, is it 11 years?
11 years. And in the industry, probably over 20 years. So started out really as a 17-year-old, just come out of the army, didn't really know what to do.
I didn't know that. You were in the army.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
So I quit. So 6 months in the army, learned how to be I suppose a private soldier, if you like, a lot of life skills and stuff. I suppose a harsh bump into real life. And then realised, although I was a super fit machine, that I didn't really want to be a mechanic. I wasn't going to earn a lot of money doing it. So come out, decided to start again. There was no apprenticeships going, so fell into this on a rolling contract, and within 2 weeks picked up the assistant surveyor role pretty well. Got a permanent contract put in front of us, and that was the start of my journey in asbestos. Knew nothing about it. Kicked on into surveying, analyst work, project management, and carved a half decent reputation for myself in a big corporate called Bureau Veritas. They made a load of cuts under Project Amiga, which is where Amiga was.
Is that where you met Gary?
It was, yeah. So obviously Gary very different then to how he is now. 14 years, 15 years sober, whatever it is. But back then it was all staff nights out and fun and games, great culture, very much like the Northern Accountants one. And I worked with Gary from 17 really, I suppose, and then departed that business I think when I was 25. So I was with him 8 years. He decided to set Amiga up and I'd just get my first mortgage and went down the typical safety corporate route, if you like. Went and built a sizable team with OHS as a regional manager, and then same thing happened really, centralised cutbacks, cost savings. And at that point, I thought, I wonder if I could do this better myself. And Gary kind of needed a wingman. His wingman had just been, I think he lost his driving licence and couldn't do the job anymore. I think drink driving, maybe, something like that. And so just natural time, I suppose, to make a decision as to whether to go into another corporate or to do something small and have a go at doing it myself. And that's what we did, really.
Yeah. So you've kind of your story is quite fascinating then, because you started off as an apprentice all the way through to business owner, to exit business owner, and now to an integral part of a senior management team of a much bigger corporate business. So your journey's been fantastic so far, and is still gonna keep growing and developing. Which is great. So look, I want to talk to you about the early days at Amiga. What was that like when you stepped into Amiga? Out of the safe corporate world, I know there was cuts and things like that, but you've then gone into an owner-managed business, which I think I wouldn't be unjust in saying was financially volatile.
Yeah, well, I think probably the biggest thing was I had the opportunity to become a director, and I thought this is probably the way to do it. So I think naively thought that was a good thing and something to go after.
Always seemed a good thing.
Joined, we had 8 lads who were turning over, I think, 375 grand. So Gary had done unbelievable to set it up, wear every hat. I think he nearly missed his first daughter's birth because of still being in our North Allerton office at the time. You can probably relate to all of this.
Relate to that. I didn't miss the birth, but I remember, God, was it? Joshua was born on a Thursday, and I was back at work on a Monday.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So I suppose where I first hit home was the first day I was there, the phone rang and, hello, Amiga Asbestos. And I realised there was no women work for us. There was no mother hen. Like everything that I'd known really, whether it was an office manager, someone who looked after lads, there was none of that. And I was thinking, this has got to change. what made it all worse was I was serving a month's garden leave and sort of getting ready for this new job. And when I come in, we lost our biggest client the week before.
Right.
We had if you remember, Richard was a director.
I do. I remember Richard. Yeah.
And I think the North Yorkshire contract was what set Amiga up and give Gary I suppose a platform to build Amiga. But when North Yorkshire realised that Richard was a shareholder of two businesses in what we do in surveying and then removal, it was seen as a bit of a conflict of interest. And because the plumbing and heating and asbestos removal was more important to the council than the surveying and analytical work, they very quickly squashed us and kept going with the plumbing and the asbestos removal. So I basically joined the business, and the first thing I noticed was that there was gaps in the diary, week on week. So I was running around Grafton trying to get those diary gaps filled through people that I knew. That was tough. And I was on the tools and writing tender bids on night shifts and all this type of stuff. After a period of time, as you alluded to before, we realised that because our parent company, or not parent company, but I suppose Richard being the director of another company, we were leaning on them, and we were getting a credit line from them that we weren't paying back and things like that. And very quickly realised that we weren't in the best of businesses, although we were doing quite a lot of money. I think 375 grand. My target was to try and double that to 750 grand, which I was just looking at when we exited Amiga the other week. It was funny to look back at my actual job offer and what I had to try and achieve. So obviously we did a little bit better than that, but God, not without some pain along the way.
Yeah, no, it was some painful times, yeah.
So I think very different to where I'd been working. And there was just no systems, like we went from having all these high-flying systems in a business that was doing 14 million quid to using Excel spreadsheets, manually writing quotations. To do a 200 quid quote, you were spending an hour of your time probably. If you did a 20 grand quote, it was the same hour of your time. So there was no fast way to do things. And probably another downside was that we actually were based in North Allerton, which was further away than I realised. So I was travelling 2 hours to work and back every day, in a 2-hour round trip. So very different to how things are now and how we were in the corporate world.
So when you sat there and you walk through the doors and you start to see these things, you've seen things in another way, you see what works, you see what doesn't work in corporates, because there's loads of things in corporates that don't work, but there's some great things that happen in smaller businesses that work far better. Did you start to formulate a clear vision of what you wanted for Amiga?
I think initially it was just about making everything a little bit better, because we were small and we only had like sort of 8 people. I think I quickly grew to, I think we got to 20 pretty quickly within a couple of years. So we probably shared the load a little bit and got a little bit more professional off the back of that. But in the first days, it was really, you were HR, you were quality, you were operations, you were commercial, and Gary was much the same. So we were just like passing chips, and we're still on the tools as well. So I think we knew that we didn't want it to be like that, and we had to find ways to get away from that, I suppose, and make it run like a real business. But we didn't. None of us had any money really, and Richard did have money, and he was already really generous in what he'd put in. So trying to go back and get more wasn't easy. So I think the challenges we had was that we needed to really be making decent money to invest into the things that we needed to grow and do well, but to get that money, you needed to have work, and we had all these gaps from, North Yorkshire Council at the time, striking us off their list. So that was really challenging, I suppose, in the early days. And because we didn't have, I suppose, a go-to accountant and clear numbers, we were flying blind and without, I suppose, the right factual information to make the decisions we needed to make. We didn't actually know what we had to play with, I suppose.
No, because you ran into a couple of challenges with your previous accountant. She unfortunately she became quite ill, didn't she, and sadly passed on.
Well, I think initially we were probably doing the accounting through clerks.
Right.
Richard was giving Gary an office within his office. He was giving him loads of support for clerks' infrastructure and setup initially, which naturally over time you come away from all that. But in the early days, Gary relied on all that quite heavily. So one of the first things we had to do when we got a little bit bigger was try to sort of get away from using clerks and then get our own accountant. And unfortunately, Justine, I think a lady we called who we were with for a short time, she became ill and passed away from a brain tumour. So in came Northern Accountants, and I wouldn't like to think what you had to go through to decipher where we were and the mess of numbers and everything like that.
I think that's an important thing to touch on, because there is often a transition between, there's a difference, between your understanding of where your numbers actually are in comparison to where they actually are. What you think is up to date and ready and live, and what we actually see behind the scenes, is because, you know, a lot of accountants will operate in the past. So your VAT return will get done when your VAT deadline is, and they'll cash code things, and they'll add invoices up, and they'll just submit, and they'll tidy it all up at the year end, which is why stereotypically in a lot of instances, a lot of accounts are done late, because they've got to pull together all the historical work while of all the things that they've kind of fudged to get to a reasonable position to tidy it up at the end, 9 months after the year end. And it's not easy to go back to a client and say, oh, do you know, what did you do with that transaction 27 months ago? And it's really, really difficult. So there is often that sort of gap between the transition, because we almost fell out, didn't we, in those early days? Fall out. We almost had a part in a way, didn't we? Because we came in, you know, we will deliver X, Y, and Z, and in the period we did, and I think we got it wrong, because we said we would deliver it, but what we didn't talk about was the process to be able to take it from where you were to where you needed to be in order to deliver it. So we did almost fall out. I remember Gary sitting down, and, you know, Gary's quite a forthright guy, and he's very challenging, and when he has that sort of focus, and it was a difficult conversation, and there was a bit of a misrepresentation from what my sales guy had pitched to you, what we would do and when we would do it, to what we believed we would do it. So, but yeah, once we got over that and we articulated that, we got that sort of clean edge, you really started to look at the numbers, and you always were aware of your numbers, because I remember you had your survive and thrive numbers, didn't you? They were the two key numbers that you had, but that quickly evolved, didn't it, into, you know, you started investing in budgets and forecasts and analysis, and understanding the past has an impact on the future, which we can learn from, but ultimately we can't change the past. What we can do is learn from it and move things forward. So tell us about how the sort of management information and the sort of the forecast, the budgets, and those sort of, for want of a better phrase, maybe a CFO sort of meeting style sort of approach helped you in that progression from, I think at the time you were about 1.2 million. So when you exited, I don't know if we can say commercially what you exited for or what you was exiting at, but it was significantly bigger than that, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think our most recent accounts was about 4.1 maybe, so quite a way different from 1.2, but I think we sat between that 1.2 and 1.6 for a long time. Probably faced a lot of the challenges that businesses of that size did, where you haven't got an unlimited amount of money to go and spend unless you go and borrow it. You're trying to actually behave like a real business, but to behave like a real business costs money and time and effort and investment. But I think, I think initially we were getting these numbers and probably didn't know a lot about what they meant and what they were telling us, and certainly the terminology. So I think as you guys started to educate us, we just invested in a load of business coaching. A guy called Dan Bradbury, a little shout out for him. And
he did some good stuff for you.
He did. He was really good in, I suppose, in educating and upskilling me and Gary. But the way he used to set his classes up was that you work with 700 other businesses. And obviously we went in there quite nervous about being, you know, really uneducated, probably not in the best shape. We definitely didn't feel like we had the money to be spending on this coaching, and I was quite resistant to it, but Gary was very much about, you know, doing it, and he believed in the bigger thing. And I think what we learned was that our numbers and the information Northern Accountants were providing was actually better than most other companies. So we'd sit around the table with companies that were doing 15, 20 million and companies that were doing 250 grand a year. But we were always commended on our homework, our prep. We're obviously challenged by the other 7 companies on everything that we were doing, and we gained a lot of good advice and I suppose a lot of nitpicking from those classroom sessions. But the big thing was we started to understand what a balance sheet was, you know, what the monthly reporting meant, how we were performing, and we started to get a better grasp on factual information. And then when we would come and have the monthly meeting with you guys, all of a sudden they were like so much more useful. Obviously the bad days were bad, and there was plenty of them.
We had them, but we had some good days.
You'll remember what I was like.
We went into Leeds that day. Where did we go? Went to Sulanay for something to eat.
We did, We
bought Amiga watches.
Yeah, that was nice.
I wasn't going to buy one, but you two did, and then we had too much to drink.
Our fault.
I bought one.
It was our fault, that one.
But that was when we got the business out of a negative position into a positive one, didn't we?
When, like
you talk about a lot, is it takes money and time and investment to grow a successful business and to scale a successful business. So while you're building and scaling businesses, that takes time, and ultimately it retracts from profitability and income. So when you talk about those periods of the dark days where it took you a while to get you out that 1.2 to 1.6, once you'd built the infrastructure of the business, you invested a lot in your IT infrastructure, your reporting, all the sort of the way that all those sorts of things, your invoicing, everything that you capture, you invested lots of that. Once that was done, you saw the numbers skyrocket.
And you think at that point you're starting to crack it, and you start believing it all.
And someone kicks you in the face.
But then you realise that the cash flow is the thing. So you start to, your brand gets better, your team culture gets better, the numbers being available become an everyday thing. So you've got an eye on everything that you're doing, and you're making better decisions based on the information you've got. Start to look forward to those meetings, because we stopped doing the business coaching, but we still believed in getting outside the business so we could reflect on what was going.
Yeah, because you go away quarterly, wouldn't you?
We'd have like a director's retreat.
I used to go for a spa.
We did.
I used to get the WhatsApp messages, the pictures of your feet, and a beer sat around a pool. Yeah,
we'd have a spa. We'd still follow the same format of the homework without the businesses challenging us. It was just 3 directors challenging each other. And again, all the Northern accountants prep and numbers, and the reporting was key. We was all on screen talking through what we needed to address. But I think all that was great. But I think what you don't see is what's coming up behind you. Sometimes you start looking that far forward, and you're growing and you're winning all this work, and people are passing you around, people are treating you different, your reputation's growing. And then all of a sudden you realise that you're going to run out of money, because in what you're doing and growing's costing money. You're recruiting people, you're paying agency fees, you're investing in systems, and then next thing you know, it only takes a few clients to not pay you on time and stuff, and you're thinking, hold on here, we need to do something to get all this in, and you face a totally different sort of problem. So I always remember, obviously COVID and things like that, but I remember before that, a good bit of advice you'd give us was to pay ourselves early, because I think you've said this before, but you were saying along the lines of, if everybody gets paid on the same day and numbers are a problem or cash flow is a problem, then the directors typically won't pay themselves, or they'll take less. And we've all done that, haven't we? A lot of people watching this will no doubt be able to relate to that as well. But I think you'd said pay yourself on the 20th, because you'll never let the lads down. You'll always find a way to make sure that everything's in order for payday. But at least that way your own family's not suffering along the way. So I always thought that was a good bit of advice as well.
Yeah, I remember doing that a long time ago. It started off with a £500 a week direct debit. Standing order it was. Just every week went out £500, so I had to make sure that was in. I had to borrow it off my mum once. I remember ringing her from, our offices were up on the big roundabout there, and I remember ringing, can I borrow £500? And she let me, in fairness to it. But that is a fundamental thing, is getting that sort of thing in there. So,
but the CFO stuff, to go back to it, I think it was like having another director, really. Those meetings, and I think Northern Accountants alongside us really grew, and like the talent that you had in this business got stronger all the time as well. And we got to know people a lot better, and I think they got to know our business a lot better over a few year period, and it just became like a really good match, really, where we were getting together, and a lot of the best ideas were coming out of those hour and a half, 2 hours meetings, again, based largely around numbers, but also you were a business owner, you had challenges, you had restructures, you had things you needed to overcome, and you could pass that experience on, or you could foresee the issues we were having, and you might have known somebody or something or a process we could change that might have been able to help us. So it was more than just numbers at times. Sometimes it was just, directors of another business actually sharing ideas based on their own experience of being in business. So
and the beauty, like in my job, is I get to see that across so many different businesses. So most times when somebody's coming up with an issue, especially now as I'm significantly older than when I started, you've seen it. So I've seen this before, and they did this and that didn't work, but they did this and this really worked. So you can kind of relay that sort of experience to others, like you say, as part of that sort of strategic board, I suppose, really.
And I think the other thing is, there's no emotion in what you guys do. We're making decisions, and we know that the right thing to do is make decisions based on fact and not emotion. But when it's your baby and it's your business, I remember when we closed Scotland, and you were just like, you need to close it, like as blunt as that. There's nobody in there, you're keeping it open, hoping for the right guy to walk through the door and kick it off. It's not happening. Imagine what your business looks like without that cost. And we were thinking, but it looks like a backward step. It portrays the wrong image, and you were like, nobody's probably going to realise because you're not doing anything out that office. And we closed it, and everything, got stronger pretty much overnight.
Exact same thing happened to us. We did an acquisition over on Merseyside, and when we came out of that, it was like, it's just not working. Let's come out of it, and we were significantly stronger the very next day. There's sometimes you have to do these things, and you're bold for trying these things. I was always a massive admirer of that, what you wanted to do. You looked at the Southern office and those sort of things, but actually when you get down to it, what are you good at? Where are you good at it? Let's do it from there. You did open a Ripponton? Yeah. So you did have a Ripponton, and that became really successful?
Yeah, we opened another office. We did it in the right place, really, where there was better access to recruitment, to industry, to, I suppose, similar clients that we're already working with, and also friends in a network. Obviously, even just as much as coming here in Morley, it was 20 minutes down the road, so it made it a lot easier.
Tie it all in, didn't you? Or they could come here or whatever. So there's some really good things. You've got to try things, and things will fail. And I think it's a testament to people who are prepared to do that and then go, I've done that wrong. Let's start again. Let's rather than just keep flogging a dead horse and moving it in that sort of thing. So you've had all this success. The business is going really, really well, and there always was a plan to sell, wasn't there? I think Gary certainly had one. Yeah.
I think Gary never wanted to be in it forever.
No.
I think he was pretty open with that, but I think we probably never believed it was going to happen. He
had a good number, didn't he?
Yeah,
in his mind, what he wanted to do. And and everybody benefited from those sort of things, and he took you along that journey, didn't he? Really, to get to that point. He very much drove that. So when it came to the selling, how was that for you personally?
I think like I just sort of mentioned there, I don't think me and Craig ever believed it was going to happen, because it wasn't like anyone had ever knocked on the door, and like wanted to sell us. So if they did, it was very much like sort of tongue in cheek, and it never really had much substance behind it. It was only really when he come along that there seemed genuine interest, and there was real meetings, and I don't think we were in the right position to sell, and we probably weren't quite what they wanted at the time.
Because this was a long process. This was 18
months? A couple of years, really, I think we were talking. But I think what it did do is it gave the likes of myself and Gary an idea of what other companies wanted and what they considered a good purchase. So we sort of knew where we had to be numbers-wise, what we had to be as a business to be attractive to other people. And we were already trying to be that anyway, but it just probably refocused it a little bit more. And
I love that, because so many people will get to a point, I'll sell it, and wake up and want to sell it and think they can sell it tomorrow. When actually it's such a long process. They almost say that you really need to be doing 2 to 3 years in advance, and that's building up your sales room. So all your sales data needs to be your management information, your contracts, all those sort of things, because that's what the firms are going to come in and go, that's what I want, and that's what drives the value in the price. Because if there's any gaps in your financials, they will exploit those gaps to reduce the fee. I need a covenant for this, and I need a thingy for that, and I'm going to knock this off for that, and I don't like your WIP calculation. Or I'm not saying that this happened with you guys, because you had quite a smooth relationship, but it was intensive when it ramped up. But when you said you were talking for 2 years, you were still sending quarterly information over to them, weren't you? In advance of those actually signing, sort of, we're doing this, the due diligence started.
Yeah, I think from the initial meetings, although it probably wasn't the right time, I think they knew we were a good potential fit for them, culturally and also geographically. And I think they knew that they were going to get a good management team outside of Gary, and that the business could cope with Gary going. So I think from their point of view, there was a lot of attraction there, but it needed to be a worthwhile spend. So we had to get to a certain size and be pretty bulletproof with a few solid contracts and things like that. And I think from our point of view, we had to almost go away and build a business that didn't need Gary so much. So Gary naturally moved into a bit of quality, a bit of HR, a bit of tender writing and training, but things that we knew a corporate would have in place through different teams and stuff. So probably was a bit of strategy without thinking too much about it. Just a natural progression from that point of view. And I think that was all really useful. I think the learning process of even just sitting down and seeing what company, because we'd never have a meeting with anybody who wanted to buy us or even entertain the idea of it, and then very quickly we had 4 or 5, and the message was much the same. Obviously very different from people in industry to people outside of industry, and I think I even said to you at one point, what would you pay for us, Because I think your expectations they are your expectations, but based on what other people have done. The only people you've ever spoken to at that point is people who've exited, and the world they lived in the industry they were in, and the EBITDA and the multipliers and everything, that's totally different to where we are. So I think that was the other thing, we had to be realistic about what that looked like, and Gary's number wasn't Gary's number anymore. It was like, this is what realistically the business is probably worth now.
Yeah.
You know, at what point is that acceptable and worthwhile selling for if you genuinely want to get out? And of course there was other options as well, with the likes of a management buyout, but for myself and Craig, I think without an investor that was going to be really tough to borrow all that money. And
because you've got to service that debt then, haven't you, as well as...
Well, there's that as well, and then we didn't have the support of the corporate, you know, so if we did go and buy Gary out, there was still no HR team, no quality team.
So
you know, the things that Gary was doing, we would have had to repair for, which would have ultimately set us back in trying to recover the money that we'd spent. So
yeah, no, the exit model that you took, I think, was the right play. When you actually break it down and look at it, you managed to cash in some value, and you're now part of an entity which is looking forward. It's progressive. It wants to go in the right place, and you're a senior part of that team now. So you'll do really well out of that. So yeah, it was a good process to go through. So in terms of how did you you know, because I don't think people understand that the stress and pressure of the actual sales process. Because I remember speaking to you, we used to do a lot of voice notes of late at night or have phone calls and things like that. But that pressure that put you on for the delivery for information, the expectations, the pushbacks, the challenges, how was that emotionally for you?
It was horrendous, because initially, I think it was the middle of last year, we got the initial offer and we accepted. I think we got somewhere like 9 or 10 weeks into it, and then it broke down. So we actually had like a failure in the sale initially. And then it come back alive early part of this year. We tried to just pick up from where we were, but I think particularly for Gary, who obviously was looking to do other things and move into...
He'd almost mentally checked out at that point.
Yeah, I think he's emotionally was hard on all of us, but in particular him, because he was already set off down another career path. So that was tough. And then when I come back around to give him his due, I think you know, Gary worked night and day on the deal. We had to still keep a successful business, you know, moving forward.
And if you didn't hit your numbers, the numbers changed in the sale proceeds, which then undermined all the hard work that had gone on anyway.
But also, you know, like, you can't afford the staff to know. Obviously your family know, they quite receptive to it and supportive. But in my case, I had a baby who was like 6 months old, so like, you're not sleeping great, you're up early, you're trying to run a business and keep everything as normal as possible for everybody, while Gary's doing this thing in the background, and then on the night times we're catching up with our bits that we're needed for in this process, and all around, you know, young children and stuff. But I think the actual process of sale is nothing like what you would expect, and actually selling as well. I think people, or my perception of it from speaking to other people, was that you go through a bit of a tough process with due diligence and things, and then you're all sat in this boardroom with champagne, and it's like, is that a deal? And down it goes, and off you go and celebrate and buy Porsches like a loaf of bread and all this type of thing. And it was nothing like that. It was like super intense. You know, both lawyers going at each other.
They really, lawyers are great and they're out to protect your interests, but they really make things hard when they're arguing over words or terms, and it's all for the best interest. I'm not being critical, but it does make it really, really difficult, and it creates, I always find it creates resistance or friction between the buyer and the seller, because it's almost the solicitors getting involved, and they have to, because otherwise they have to protect you. But it almost does create that resistance where you go, why is he asking me that?
Yeah.
We've dealt with this. We've agreed this. And it's like, well, I need it writing down in the exact terminology, backwards and forwards.
We had you know, very genuine buyers who we knew and had been talking to for 2 years, and even still, although we had all the trust in the world in them, these guys can tie in so many knots that you start to doubt
what the actual intention is.
The agenda, the intentions. There was loads of phone calls with the guys where they were like, no guys, this is just literally lawyers being lawyers. Our guys are looking after our interests, yours are looking after yours. Ultimately they both work for us. We can tell them what to do and which decision to make, so we've just got to have these conversations behind the scenes to make sure we're comfortable with the decision we're making, and then we'll put it into some sort of formal writing. So
there's all the financial wranglings as well, you know, work in progress, you know, capital on account, all those sorts of numbers which are going backwards and forwards. And I know you worked particularly closely with Graham on that side of things.
I think Mark and Graham were unbelievable. 100% made the right decision in pairing up with you guys with it. And I know it was quite a fairly new offering for you guys off the back of
the acquisition from Empowered. It was, historically, we wouldn't have got involved in this at all. We would have probably still had the same conversations on an evening or whatever, but there would be no involvement from us. But whereas now, bringing the expertise in like Graham, you know, he really guided us through that process and really took us on to a new level with a total new service offering. And I think we've done 5 or 6 deals like that now, which in such a short space of time is unbelievable for us as a firm that we can now offer that. But also, you've got that, you're not paying someone to learn the history. We know the history. We know you. We knew what, you know. I didn't have any involvement with the buyers or the lawyers, but in between you guys, how you operated, how Graham operated, I could feed that information in. Whereas we wouldn't have had that sort of insight if it had been a third party.
No, it probably would have been quite hard work, because I think you would have been, you know, separate deadlines, and I suppose they would have been saying we're waiting on this from them, and you would have been waiting on things from our third party. Whereas I think the whole thing was really smooth, working with tight deadlines. We were trying to get it done at the end of March.
Did we do it? What time did it get done?
So it was 9/18 on the 28th of March.
On the 28th, So it was right to the wire, wasn't it? And that was a Friday night, wasn't it?
Which was a whole different story. So when I was saying before about being in a boardroom, you know, champagne and all this, and then the money goes into your bank, it was nothing like that.
Phones just sat there waiting for messages. WhatsApp's going back, still working. I was talking to Mark. I was getting feedback from Graham and Colin, and they're arguing over this term now and this, that, and the other. It's like, then the text message came through 9/18. Done.
I was on the train, got back, got to the house. Everything looked like it was just about sorted. Waiting for official correspondence to say it was past 5 o'clock, so we knew no money was coming at that point. I'm pushing the baby around Tesco's on DocuSign. To ring me mate up saying, "Can you witness this? Can you witness this for us?" Blah blah blah. Job done, and then 9/18 we got the official emails to say it was done, and I was that blaked by it all. I was asleep by 9:30. I text Carly and my mum. That were the two people I text. And then when the buyers rung to congratulate us, I was asleep. So all the calls took place the Saturday morning. And Gary was quite emotional. He'd really appreciative of the efforts that we'd applied and what we'd done, to get Amigo
his life, and he's made a great impact on yours as well. He's obviously you've gone along for the ride. You've been part of the equity sale, so you've done well out of that. And you've also now got yourself in a position with a really successful and forward-thinking progressive company on their senior management team. So it's worked for both people, hasn't it? Well, and Craig as well, of course.
Yeah, no, I think as people, we're all totally different, and you probably know this more than most. But I think as a group of directors, we probably blend like how you do with yours, really, where we're totally different but really strong together. Got technical guys, commercial guys. The more boring ops guy in Craig, he wouldn't mind us saying.
That's our Ben, by the way. He's boring Ben.
So
put that in the main script, in the bulletin bit.
Yeah.
Boring Ben.
But together, everything used to get done and done well. So we'll certainly miss Gary. But yeah, for me now, it's more about doing well in this job. And again, going back to the sale, it was Friday night, you get the nod, you go to bed, you get up, you say thank you, well done to everybody on the Saturday, speak to the buyers, everyone's delighted. It was great to hear that they were as happy about it as us, because that was important as well. Yeah. And then everybody's like, what's it like when you go into work the Monday? Obviously the natural thing is you're waiting for the money to hit your bank, of course.
I remember texting you, is it coming yet? Not yet.
I was delivering a training course, so
you couldn't even check your bank.
I go and do this training course, and I'm nervous more about Gary's email going out to the staff and how that is received when I'm not in the office than probably the money going in. So I'm doing the training course, get back into the office, and you walk in and you'd see the uncertainty in the staff. Not many of them looked at us, said much.
No.
You kind of felt like had you sold them down the river. Is that how they see it? And
it's a traumatic time. I remember we bought a business in Doncaster, and I'd agreed it all. It'd been done a while, and I turned up to meet the team. I had a presentation, bouquets of flowers, everything. It was a female dominated office at that point. I think there were 3 women worked in there, 3 or 4 women worked in there at the time. And I texted him to say I was in the car park, and he said, "Do us a favour, just hang on 10 minutes while I tell him."
Yeah.
So everything that I'd done there just went to shit.
Yeah,
and before you know it, it's basically like, okay then. So you walked in and just faced this like thunder. Like, this was a long hour and a half. And here's some flowers and just snarling at you. I mean, obviously it was such a big shock for them because they had no idea it was coming. But yeah, getting the team on board is a really, really key thing.
I mean, that's a whole other process, isn't it? And then to give EE their due with this, because they had acquisitions before, they've done acquisitions, they've probably had some pain with it. They were really good at how they did it, yeah. So literally I went in and obviously offered everybody the chance to speak to us who wanted to. I think people were concerned. Not many people text you to say well done. I noticed that. It wasn't like, you know, you've killed yourself for the last 11 years, well done.
Sold out. Yeah.
It was more, what does this mean for me? Those were the sort of texts you were getting there, which, you know, I understand.
They'll know that you're all right because you've sold.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have sold if you weren't going to be all right. No. So what about them and what about me? And it is a really important thing. It's a really difficult time. And I think that sometimes gets overlooked for the team that has been acquired. And then, of course, you've got the cultural differences between the way that this team operates to the way that the HQ operates.
Yeah.
And merging those two things and not having a divide and stuff, it's such a big challenge. You've got those challenges to come. Yeah. But it sounds like he have put some good steps in place to move it in the right direction. They come
up, I think, on the Wednesday, so they were up sharp, you know, got a hotel hired out, presented everything about what they were about. And I think the team quickly realised why we'd picked them as the ideal suitor, because the guys who like the predominant guys who run it have had the business 20 odd year themselves, so they're very much like me and Gary and Craig. They've built it up. There's some private equity in the business, but those guys are still there, and it's not run like this big corporate machine that I've worked in the past. It's still very much a people, I suppose, a people employer, a people business where like you speak to you like normal guys, they take an interest in you, and very quickly my staff were saying they seem like okay guys and not too different to the way that we work. And I was like, well, that was why we felt it was a good fit. You know, they were I suppose they weren't too strict in the way that they do things. It was more, you know, family orientated, very personable. They weren't hiding behind laptops and computers. They were there to be seen, speaking to everybody and making themselves available, which I think went a long way.
Brilliant. It's such a great story, and it's not over yet, which is what I like. I'm looking forward to seeing the next couple of years to see how that pans out. I suppose you are too. So we're running out of time, so thank you very much. But just in closing then, as a final sort of thing, what advice would you give to anybody running a business now?
I definitely think trying to build your business to sell is not a bad plan. You might have no intention of doing that, but I think in building to sell, you'll build yourself a good business. Yeah, I think you just naturally will run a good business. The common picture I had from people we spoke to years ago, now that I can align it to what we've just been through, was all around having strong numbers and making decisions based on fact and not emotion. And I think when you're small and every man counts, that's a bit harder than when you're a bit bigger and people can be a bit more expendable. But I definitely think, you know, knowing your numbers, you know, having a buffer and cash reserves and having, I suppose, tools in place to help you budget, forecast, allow a bit of pain along the way and things like that is a big thing. Yeah, a lot of pain. And I think sometimes aiming for targets that you know are going to stretch you, but in the knowledge that if you fall short, you'd still be pretty happy with the end result. I think...
I can't remember who said it to me, but reach for the stars, and if you hit the sky, you've had a good day.
That's it, exactly. Because sometimes you won't always get what you want because there's a lot of bumps in the road in business when there's so many people and clients and things involved. But if you can be comfortable at 80% of what you're going for and be happy with that result, I definitely think setting it up that way is a little bit more realistic and a bit more forgiving.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Dave. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Likewise.
Golf.
Cheers.